nation, COVID is making those determinations for us. So that is a challenge, and how
And
we
of
can
course,
smartly and safely open the economy without the adverse risk of having COVID enter our shores again.
yeah, because you just mentioned that tourism is a very important sector for the country, and I mean, you mentioned also having to be smart in reopening the sector. But what can be done really going forward in the course of this pandemic, because the economy needs to survive. So, what is the government's plan as it relates to that?
Well, right now we are looking at those countries that fall under 0.02% of transmission, and we are looking at those countries as the more desirable places. We are rolling out a package very shortly where persons who are allowed to work from home can come to Anguilla. You, of course, you'll have to apply and you have to go through certain protocol of testing and quarantine once on arrival for a period of time of 14 days. And once you're given the all clear, you're allowed to mingle around in the community and also work from home. We believe that we can facilitate that. That can give us a little jump start in terms of our economy. And also for those respective destinations that will be approved, high net worth persons who, can travel private to Anguilla. That is a big part of our tourism product. That is where we're going to be going. And we'll be rolling that out very shortly. I'm talking within a matter of a week.
Oh
We'll be
wow! So, but that this is actually targeted towards regional tourists, or because I know the Barbados Prime Minister, she made mention of something similar prior,
Yes.
but that one was actually geared towards foreigners, and I mean they definitely have hardest hit by COVID-19. So, who is this geared toward?
Well, this is geared towards those persons who are, in the digital in the digital economy. Mostly those who are engaged in the digital economy, and also those high net worth persons who want to get away and don't mind being quarantined on the beach. We have some of the world's best beaches. And you being quarantined on the beach. I mean, what can beat that?
That brings me to a question because Antigua and Barbuda's prime minister made certain declarations that while they have opened their economy to foreigners, some people have been fabricating the test results. How do you ensure that Anguilla remains COVID-19 free if there's the possible threat of people not being totally honest in terms of their status?
Well, we persons are not going to be able to just jump on a plane and come to Anguilla. We don't have any capacity for transatlantic commercial traffic. There's only, we don't have, we have an international airport, yes, but it's only geared towards private jets and small interregional flights. So that in itself reduces that scope. We're not opening the island. We are allowing people on a on an application process and a needs be process to be processed by us, to be vetted by us before we allow them to come to Anguilla. So even if you are interested in coming to Anguilla, you're not just going to book a flight and come to Anguilla. You're going to go through a rigid process of testing of a certain protocol, and even when on arrival, you won't be allowed to go freely. You'll be in quarantine. You'll be driven directly to the facility. You'll be in quarantine for that particular, restricted for that particular period, and you'll be tested on arrival. You'll be tested 10 to 14 days later. So if you fake your test in whichever destination you're coming from, you're not going to fake the test in Anguilla. But apart from that, we are not allowing persons from the United States to come to Anguilla at this time because, as you know, we know what we know about the United
Yeah, most definitely. We'll take a short break now, Minister Hughes, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion on tourism in Anguilla and what this new government has in store for the country. Stay with us.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays. Only on TeleSUR.
Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Anguilla's Tourism Minister Hayden Hughes to discuss the current situation in the country amid the global pandemic. Earlier, we were discussing tourism in Anguilla. And I mean, I want to return to that question and ask you, how difficult would you say it is to manage Anguilla's economy going forward? But realistically speaking as well, are there plans to diversify and to try and encourage people to find other ways of making money and generating income amidst the pandemic?
Yeah, there are plans already afoot for us to look at different policies and regulations, legislation to diversify the economy. There are also regulations that we are policy and regulations legislation to decriminalization, but also we're looking at a manufacturing policy, manufacturing legislation, so we can embark on small, light manufacturing in Anguilla. But one of the things that we must not run away from, at the end of the day, Anguilla, like most of the Caribbean, does not print money. We rely on foreign income coming to Anguilla, and in the diversification of the economy during this COVID period, where no new dollars are coming in, is going to be a challenge. One of the things that we are embarking upon, because I'm also the minister responsible for ports, infrastructure, housing, telecommunications, electricity, water, public utilities. So I am also embarking upon, we're looking at how we can green Anguilla in terms of moving towards renewable energy and renewable energy integration. This is something that is going to be a huge platform for us because we spend too much money on fossil fuels to generate electricity in Anguilla. So there's a number of policy initiatives, there's a number of projects that we're embarking upon to make the cost of governing lower, to reduce the cost of governing. So that in itself should be able to free up more money for infrastructure projects and also for social projects, social development projects. But as it relates to the diversification of the economy, we are moving to digital. We are doing a lot of digital stuff. We are, as I said before, we are embarking on policies to create a manufacturing industry. Some of the areas that we are really going towards in terms of diversification is farming and fishing. We have the Parliamentary Secretary, the Honorable Quincy Gomes Marie, who herself is under the age of 30 and elected. She was elected as well. And she is tasked with that responsibility. The green industry, the blue industries, and also to really push ahead in terms of the fishing industry, because Anguilla has some of the largest fishing grounds, if not the largest fishing grounds in the entire Caribbean. We have 200 nautical miles of ocean territory, and that in itself is significant, and hasn't been exploited, at least not by us. So some of the things that we want to do, we want to look at offering fishing licenses that bring foreign capital into Anguilla. We are also in support of fishing, local fishing. There's a company in Anguilla, a local company that is embarking upon a large fishing trawler that can go out and exploit those waters. So that in itself will offer a number of industries to us in terms of a fish processing plant. And if we can export some of our goods, because we have tuna in abundance, we have mahi in abundance, we have lobster in abundance. 200 nautical miles, over 200 nautical miles can tell you what the capacity that we have out there. Mm-hmm. So this is something that I think from a tourism standpoint is also a marketing tool, because when you export something that says made in Anguilla, that in itself creates some eyeballs to say, hey, where's Anguilla? Because for the most part, some of us still may not know where Anguilla is.
Most definitely. And I mean, shifting our attention now back to the recent elections that was held last month. I mean, how did the Anguilla Progressive Movement sell itself to the people? I mean, especially because there were so many young candidates vying for positions, and then you won, I believe, 7 out of the 11 seats. That was significant. How were you guys able to do that?
And the seats that we lost, they were very narrow losses. One of our candidates lost by 16 votes, one lost by 40 votes, and the other lost by 23 votes. So the losses were very close. So that says a lot, that the losses were close, but the wins were significant. But the truth of the matter is that all of our candidates were known. We have been known. I have been doing radio talk show. and I'm a former junior minister of tourism. I've been doing radio talk show for almost 2 decades. So I am known. The Honorable Diane Kendish Rogers, she was an athlete representing Anguilla. She was also Miss Universe Great Britain and participated in the Miss Universe pageant, who was one of the top 20 finalists in Miss Universe. She's well known. All of our candidates were already well known. So it's easy to sell people who are already well known by the entire populace. So that in itself gave us a real advantage. And I think Dr. Webster was very careful in vetting each candidate to ensure that the negatives were as low as possible. And that in itself lent to the credibility of the entire process. And people sometimes judge you from your record, your personal record, your professional record. And when you say something, they judge you against that record. We were able to say, hey, look at our personal lives. Look what we've been able to accomplish outside of politics. And give us this opportunity, we'll be able to do it inside of the realms of Parliament, where you have the power to enact legislation, you have the power to draft policy that can benefit the lives and create opportunities for the people.
Most definitely. I mean, a spotlight was placed on Anguilla following the murder of Kenny Mitchell by Scott Hapgood. And then 14 months later, I mean, is this a point of contention for your government? And then, I mean, of course, you as tourism minister, because there have been calls to have him extradited to the island to face the charges, but nothing has really come out of that.
Well, it's not a point of contention for our government, because, as you would appreciate, I was one of the leading proponents for him having been extradited. I was one of the leading proponents for him not even leaving the island to begin with. And I spent a good time on my political, not on my political platform, but my radio talk show and other vehicle social media platforms. I did interviews with NBC and CBS and a number of different US based publications and news outlets on this particular issue. So now I am in government, and it's, of course, without a shadow of a doubt, it's something that I would be pushing for very strongly, because I believe that he should never have left Anguilla's shores. I believe he should be here to face justice, and that will not rest with me. So it's not a point of contention. It's something that we're going to be pushing forward.
I mean, most definitely. But I mean, why was he even allowed to leave the country?
There's something called white privilege.
Definitely.
People will be afraid to say it, and maybe some of my political colleagues will be afraid to say it, but if you know me and if you have done your research, you'll know that I say it as it is. You know, I have to practice some political correctness now, but I have that part of me have not evaporated. But there was a certain amount of privilege that came along with him being allowed that privilege. And I can tell you, if it was a Caribbean brother, was an African American, he would not have been where he is today. He would have been sitting firmly in Her Majesty's prison in Anguilla.
So are you confident that with yourself and the activism, I mean, taking place in Anguilla, and then what we see with Black Lives Matter protests in the United States, and then that spread across the world, are you confident that, you know, Scott Hapgood will be extradited back to Anguilla to face charges?
Well, I will not stop. I will not stop. I'm very confident, because I don't think that anybody should suffer the injustice that Kenny Mitchell has suffered, and we will not stop until he's here to face justice. The thing is that Anguilla have a very good judicial system. He has no fear about a biased judicial system, and if he was truly innocent, he would volunteer himself to be here. He had never faced any risk of personal harm while he was here. He or his family. We are not a people who does that. And even after this incident, he was free to walk around, moved around without any fear. So in terms of his personal safety, he has nothing to fear. But in terms of justice, he has to be here.
Yeah.
He must be here.
Now, turning our attention, now we are in the midst of the hurricane season, and I believe the last hurricane to affect Anguilla would have been Irma in 2017, Category 5 strength. How's this government preparing for the possibility of such a disaster going forward at this time?
Well, we're in the midst of the hurricane season, but we are part of the hurricane zone. We are part of the hurricane belt. We're not as privileged as you are to be living outside of that belt. But since 1960, we have been building with the expectation of a hurricane, because in 1960, Hurricane Donna hit Anguilla in September of that year, and 7 people died. And in 1995, we had Hurricane Hurricane Lewis and Hurricane Maria, that really devastated Anguilla, and we bounced back soon thereafter. We had hurricane to throw that between that period in 2017, but in 2017, that was a monster, and we survived. And I'm sitting right here in my home, which had minimal damage, even though there are some persons who are not as privileged as I am. But we are always ready for hurricanes. We are always ready for hurricanes. So I have no fear about that whatsoever. We are always ready. Now it's a whole different situation because we have the pandemic, the global pandemic. So how we recover after the pandemic is going to be interesting to see. But we are always ready, physically ready for hurricanes.
Minister, here's your closing comments to our viewers. You're free to plug your invitation to COVID-19 free Anguilla as well.
Well, you're getting a personal invitation, so your invitation is secured. So don't lose your invitation before I change my mind.
Of course, I'm there. I mean, blue seas is all I need, and that's it. I'm there.
Yeah, people really want to get away. People really want to get away from their particular situations, especially those people in Europe. Right now, we are going to be doing some heavy marketing into Canada and certain countries into Europe, which falls under 0.02%. That is where we're going to be pushing right now. We're going to, as I said before, we're going to evaluate every application on a case-by-case basis. And hopefully soon we will be able to open to North America in a careful, very careful and calculated manner. But that is the way it's going to be. Unfortunately, I can't just have a full-fledged pitch to come to Anguilla at this point, because that is not exactly what we want. It's kind of crazy to think that here I am as a Minister of Tourism and not being able to say, come to Anguilla, you know? And that's just the reality of the times that we're living in. And unfortunately, when we open, it's not going to be determined by us, but it's going to be determined by COVID-19. And until then, just keep your eyes open and keep your ears open, but you'll be hearing a lot from Anguilla as we move forward.
Of course, and I hope I can be there on the ground to see it myself. Minister Hughes, Tourism Minister of Anguilla, thank you so much for joining us.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
The state of affairs in all Caribbean countries remains one of serious concern. Dependent on tourism, yet battered by the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, we'll continue to keep an eye on these issues affecting the region. To keep up with news and more, join us on social media. For TeleSUR English, I am Doris Polo. Thank you so much for watching.
From here to beyond the South, from here to the Caribbean or further north, where can I see news connecting the whole South? From Washington, from Mexico, from Caracas, from Quito, from Havana. You can always see the news from a new vision, connecting the global South. Only on TeleSUR.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical move. Investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on TeleSUR.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on TeleSUR.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Afternoon. Monday, only on TeleSUR.
In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on TeleSUR.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get your body. Tuesdays, only on TeleSUR. From the TeleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela, welcome back to From the South. I am Luis de Jesus. Let's take a look at our headlines. Lebanese government has ordered house arrest to officials of Beirut's port after Tuesday's major blast that left more than 130 deaths and more than 4,000 wounded people. Brazilian court orders President Jair Bolsonaro to impose measures to protect indigenous communities during the coronavirus pandemic. And Facebook and Twitter have blocked contents from President Donald Trump's campaign's accounts for misinformation about COVID-19. Now we'll start right away with the news. Lebanese authorities ordered house arrest for a number of port officials this Wednesday, pending an investigation into the blast that occurred in Beirut on Tuesday.
The military authorities requested a compulsory house arrest on those who worked in management of the storage of the ammonium nitrate, which amounted to 2,750 tons. Those who worked on the guarding and safeguarding the files from June 2014 to August 4, 2020. Securing a certain amount of wheat after the damage of the warehouse in the fire, we request the Ministry of Public Works and Transportation to do what is needed to secure the operations of import and export through the port, Bar Beirut port, like Tripoli or Saida.
And meanwhile, nations across the globe have offered their support to the Lebanese people after the two huge blasts that killed over 100 people. Countries such as Russia, Kuwait, the Arab Emirates, France, and organizations such as the WHO have already sent medical and security workers and aid equipment to help people affected in the Beirut port explosion. And the United Nations Secretary General has extended condolences to the Lebanese government and people while reaffirming the organization's support for recovery efforts.
The Secretary General expressed his deepest condolences to the families of the victims, as well as to the people and government of Lebanon following the horrific explosions in Beirut. He wishes a speedy recovery to the injured, including several United Nations personnel working in Lebanon. The United Nations remains committed to supporting Lebanon at this difficult time and is actively assisting in the response to this incident.
And the Iranian Red Crescent Society loaded a plane with humanitarian aid for the Lebanese people. The plane is carrying much-needed medical supplies, a medical team, and a field hospital to help tackle the emergency sparked by the blasts that occurred in Beirut on Tuesday afternoon. The NGO announced that this was the first of a series of humanitarian shipments to be sent to Lebanon.
In regards to what happened yesterday in Beirut, the first shipment of Iranian aid weighing more than 95 tons, including medical items, medical equipment, food, a field hospital, and a medical team of 30 people, will be sent to Beirut.
A large fire broke out at a public market in the United Arab Emirates city of Hammam this Wednesday. Local residents reported seeing a cloud of thick and black smoke from the fire that broke out at 6:30 p.m. local time. Meanwhile, civil defense teams rushed out to the site in order to control the blaze. Authorities have not reported any injuries so far. According to reports, a nearby hospital was evacuated as a precautionary measure. The cause of the fire remains unknown. And Sri Lankans attended to the polls on Wednesday to elect a new parliament after being postponed twice due to the coronavirus pandemic. The voting ended at 5 p.m. local time with the police escorting ballot boxes to the counting centers. The elections had a large voting turnout while citizens had to comply with preventative measures not to create further spread of infections in the country, which infection toll stands at about 3,000. The results, which are to be announced on Friday, August 7th, are expected to give strong support to the president's brothers as former President Mahinda Rajapaksa is seeking a majority of 225 seats in the parliament to return as prime minister.
Say that there were no major incidents or violence related to the election. Only we have received some violation of election laws, but police and our officers tackle all these problems.
And we go now to a short break. Follow us in Twitter at TeleSUR English and Luis TeleSUR. We'll be right back. Infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on TeleSUR. Federal Supreme Court of Brazil has ordered President Jair Bolsonaro to impose measures to protect indigenous peoples during the pandemic after he vetoed several of these protection measures past July. Judges of the top judicial body have pointed out that the indigenous population of Brazil is protected by the constitutional framework. In view of this, the plenary of the Supreme Court has requested the implementation of health measures to guarantee attention and services for the different indigenous communities of the country hit by the effects of the pandemic. And the United States Senate Committee on Foreign Relations held a hearing on Venezuela this Tuesday to address the Trump's administration's policy towards the country. The committee called the U.S. Special Representative for Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, to answer questions on policy towards Venezuela, who admitted his implication in the actions to destabilize Venezuela and overthrow the government of President Nicolas Maduro. Meanwhile, Senator Chris Murphy criticized the special representative for not being successful in his task, thus confirming once again the United States' participation in the attempted coup of 2019.
But all we did was play all our cards on day one, and it didn't work. And it's just been an embarrassing mistake after mistake since. First, we thought that getting Guaido to declare himself president would be enough to topple the regime. Then we thought putting aid on the border would be enough. Then we tried to sort of construct a kind of coup in April of last year, and it blew up in our face when all the generals that were supposed to break with Maduro decided to stick with him in the end. We undermined Norway's talks last summer, and then this March we released a transition framework that frankly is almost a carbon copy of the very one that was in front of the parties last year. And now, after wasting all of this time, we are stuck with elections about to happen that, as we have talked about today, Guaido and the opposition refuse to enter. And then we are going to be in a position where we are recognizing someone as the leader of Venezuela who doesn't control the government, who doesn't run the military, and who doesn't even hold office.
And as a matter of fact, Venezuela has rejected the statements made by the United States Special Representative Elliot Abrams and senators who attended the hearing of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Upper House, where they reiterated support for illegal interference in Venezuela's internal affairs. During the hearing held on Tuesday, Abrams reiterated his support for coup tactics and opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido, as did other Republican senators, although some questioned the success of Donald Trump's hand-picked representative. The Venezuelan government rejected the accusations made against it and once again condemned the coercive and illegal measures unilaterally imposed by Washington. Meanwhile, Democratic representatives criticized Abrams' historic failure of Venezuela. In more from Venezuela, Vice President of Communication Jorge Rodriguez has given up an update of the new cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours.
Venezuela reported as of Wednesday the appearance of 848 new community cases in the last 24 hours. Also, 13 imported cases to report a total of 861 cases in the last 24 hours.
And supporters and opponents of former Colombian President Álvaro Uribe Vélez took to the streets on Wednesday to voice their opinions following the Supreme Court's decision to place the senator under house arrest.
This is a national celebration. For a long time, we have been waiting for a person like Uribe to be in a process of being arrested.
We hope this is the first step for those investigations to advance, so that former President Álvaro Uribe is responsible and that he pays for the crimes he has committed.
This is an infamy. The FARC narco-terrorists guilty of committing crimes against humanity are in Congress making fun of their victims, and a patriot like Uribe is subject to unjust justice.
The heart and soul hurt when justice does not fulfill its purpose, when justice becomes politicized and justice punishes politics. We only ask for justice for Álvaro Uribe Vélez.
A spokesman for Colombia's Democratic Center political party announced this Wednesday that former Colombian president and current senator has tested positive for the novel coronavirus.
As spokesman for the Democratic Center in the Senate, we informed the public that President Álvaro Uribe has been diagnosed with COVID-19. However, his state of health is excellent. He has not presented any major symptoms or any breathing difficulties. We wish him a speedy recovery, and from the Democratic Center, we send him a hug of solidarity.
In Bolivia, the president of the de facto government, Yanine Áñez, appointed the ultra-right-wing Branko Marinkovic as responsible for the planning and management of foreign aid to manage the COVID-19 crisis. The designation comes amid allegations of corruption for the management of resources for the pandemic and unconstitutional management of the indebtedness with multilateral organizations. Reports of treason against its country also stands over Marinkovic for assassination attempts during the government of former President Evo Morales. Marinkovic returned to the country after the coup d'etat last November. In Chile, protests continue against the political prisoner of members of the Mapuche community. Mapuche leaders has said they will begin a dry hunger strike. More details with Paola Dragnik.
In Chile, particularly in the Hualmupa area, the situation with the Mapuche communities who have been protesting over the past weeks continue to intensify. We saw yesterday the images of the strong repression from carabineros against the communities that mobilized to protest in different territories of the Hualmupa region and especially in the area of Lumaco. We add to that the announcement that Mapuche political prisoners in Angol prison will begin a dry hunger strike. These prisoners were already on a hunger strike, but they were ingesting liquids. From tomorrow, this dry hunger strike is radicalized and is added to the one that already carries Machi Celestino Cordova for around 94 days. Today's afternoon, the Human Rights Committee of the Senate met and one of the spokespersons of the Mapuche political prisoners on hunger strike was there. Rodrigo Curipan, who again expressed among parliamentarians the urgent demand of the Mapuche people for the state of Chile to comply with the ILO Convention 169, which requires member states to guarantee that the original people can comply with their ancestral practices. Particularly in Article 10, reference is made to what imprisonment should be for sentenced persons in the original peoples, where is detailed that the sentence might be commuted in a certain way, so that these persons who have been sentenced from the original peoples are in their communities under ancient practices of their culture. It is preciously one of the issues that Machi Celestino Cordova is demanding, who has been on hunger strike for 94 days, to be able to go to his community to participate in the ceremonies proper to his people. Today, we were able to talk with Dr. Leonor Olate, who is monitoring the state of health of Machi Celestino Cordova, and she has confirmed that his situation is quite critical. In addition, this situation is so far from being solved because the hunger strikes in some prisons in the country are compounded by the announcements of Mapuche political prisoners in Angol prison.
Thank you to Paola Dragnik for that report. And COVID-19 cases in the Caribbean are still on the rise. In the Dominican Republic, the health system collapses after the total occupation of its spaces, while Haitian citizens express their concern for a possible resurgence of infections after the lifting of the restrictions. These and more details with our correspondent, Daisy Toussaint.
Saludos a ti, a todos nuestros
In the Dominican Republic, COVID-19 confirmed cases have increased to 75,690, of which 1,222 have died and 40,122 have recovered, according to the public health report issued this Wednesday. 2 weeks ago, it was announced that the large Domingo Center had occupied 100% of the hospital's beds intended to attend patients with COVID-19. The authorities integrate new hospital rooms into medical centers to address the crisis, thus achieving an improvement in the operational capacity of the health system to face the pandemic. Up to date, 1,147 hospitalizations were registered, an occupation of 68% of the beds destined to patients with COVID-19. The Haitian government warned the population that despite the lifting of the state of emergency amid the COVID-19 and the reactivation of economic activities, the coronavirus continues in the country. Faced with a feared resurgence of the pandemic, the Ministry of Culture and Communication expressed concern about the behavior of citizens who do not respect the measures implemented to prevent the virus from continuing to spread. Haiti recorded at least 7,532 confirmed cases of COVID-19, of which 171 have died and 4,832 recovered. In Puerto Rico, the Department of Health reported this Wednesday 9 additional deaths of COVID-19, between 132 confirmed deaths and 113 probable deaths. There is now a total of 246 deaths, and the total number of infections stands at 19,651. The total of COVID-19 hospitalizations is 507. Of these, 73 are in intensive care units, and 54 have been connected to a mechanical respirator.
Daisy Toussaint from Santo Domingo with the report. And now, time for a second break. You can find this and many other stories, remember, at our website at telesurenglish.net. We'll be right back.
From here to beyond the South. From here to the Caribbean or further north. Where can I see news connecting the whole South? From Washington. From Mexico. From Caracas. From Quito. From Havana. You can always see the news from a new vision, connecting the global South. Only on TeleSUR.
We are back with more news. Social media, Facebook and Twitter have taken new measures against the President Donald Trump's accounts after he published misinformation about COVID-19. The measures were triggered by a post of a video that shows an interview of the president at Fox News in which Trump stated that children were almost immune to the novel coronavirus. Facebook classified the post as harmful misinformation about COVID-19. Meanwhile, Twitter decided to temporarily ban Trump campaign's account. Both social media stated that the post represents a violation of its misinformation policies on COVID-19. The measures comes in addition to a series of criticism to President Trump's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also in the U.S., the New York government declared a partial state of emergency after the aftermath of Storm Isaiah through the state. The state of emergency was decreed for more than 10 counties, including the Bronx and Queens. Governor Andrew Cuomo did not specify until when the alert will be maintained, but assured that the measure was adopted in order to adequately address the ravages caused by the phenomenon. Drug makers will likely have tens of millions of doses of coronavirus vaccines in the early part of the next year. Anthony Fauci, the top U.S. infectious diseases official, announced on Wednesday.
The federal government has invested hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to make vaccine at risk. At risk doesn't mean at risk for safety, and it doesn't mean at risk for scientific integrity. It means at financial risk. Because if the vaccine works, you've saved multiple months. If the vaccine doesn't work, you've lost a lot of money. But the government feels that even if you lose that, it's worth doing it to get a head start on the production. So we likely are going to have maybe tens of millions of doses in the early part of the year. But as we get into 2021, the manufacturers tell us that they will have hundreds of millions and likely 1 billion doses by the end of 2021.
Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has announced the reimposition of lockdown restrictions in the city of Aberdeen following reports of new COVID-19 cases.
Our travel guidance to people in Aberdeen from today is that you should no longer travel more than 5 miles for leisure or recreational purposes. You may continue to travel for work or education, but we advise against other travel. We're also advising people who are not in Aberdeen not to travel to Aberdeen. Secondly, from today, people in Aberdeen should not go into each other's houses. Extended household groups can continue, but remember these are situations which should only involve one other adult who is living on their own. And finally, we will be introducing regulations, we will publish these later today, requiring all indoor and outdoor hospitality in the city to close by 5 p.m. today.
And Kenyan health authorities reported 671 new COVID-19 cases this Wednesday.
Some 671 people have tested positive from a sample size of 6,200 in the last 24 hours. That means that today, Kenya has 23,873 positive cases. Our cumulative tests now stand at 329,123. 633 of those people are Kenyans, while 38 are foreigners.
And Kenyan health authorities also noted that a total of 723 Kenyan health workers have tested positive for COVID-19 since the outbreak.
As of today, we have 723 healthcare workers, 385 of them who are males and 338 females who have been infected by COVID-19 disease. That is about 3% of the total caseload.
Guinean Prime Minister Ibrahima Kassory Mofana expressed his support this Wednesday for the candidature of current Guinean President Alpha Conde for the presidential elections to be held in October. Prime Minister Fofana appealed to President Conde to contest the election during a two-day convention of the rally of the Guinean People Party. Meanwhile, Conde has asked the party to allow him time to decide whether to run or not. The president is nearing the end of his second five-year term in office. A recent referendum on amendments to the Guinean constitution prolonged the presidential term from 5 to 6 years.
This is the starting point today for a new, bright and promising future for Guinea and Guineans. We are proud to be the vectors of the new hope for our country and our people.
He is a man of progress, he is a man who's proven himself, and we have seen it. So why not let him work? Why not let him finish the good intentions he has for this country called Guinea, which belongs to all of us?
And as we come to the end of this news brief, we leave you with the images of the ceremony at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park held on marking the 75th anniversary of the world's first atomic bombing dropped by the United States. For TeleSUR English, I am Luis de Jesus. Thank you for watching. In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on TeleSUR.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get Your Body. Tuesdays, only on TeleSUR.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on TeleSUR.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Sean todos muy bienvenidos a Vidas. Hay lugares donde el arte se unifica con el orgullo de los pueblos. Y esos lugares están llenos de colores, alegría, pasión, tradiciones, arraigo, valor y entrega.
Real Life. Fridays. Only on TeleSUR. The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. TeleSUR documentaries. Sundays. Only on TeleSUR. TeleSUR English presents a weekly program to discuss the political, economic and social issues affecting the Caribbean community. We'll challenge stereotypes and unpack the diversity of the region through the analysis of unique cultures, religions and art. We Caribbean. Wednesdays. Only on TeleSUR.
¿En qué mundo vivimos?
Vivimos en un mundo basado en mentiras.
Injusto, en un mundo desigual.
Creo que vivimos en un mundo que de alguna manera no nos pertenece. O sea, creo que no tenemos absolutamente ningún control sobre lo que hacemos.
Nos hemos saltado de repente escrúpulos que tenían nuestros abuelos y nuestros padres, que eran los que nos hacían controlar o por lo menos prestar atención al prójimo.
Un mundo en el que finalmente la educación social no ha servido para nada y hemos bajado la defensa. Lo que se ha dado en llamar en términos económicos el capitalismo salvaje ha florecido sin más.
El todo vale, no. Y estamos en un mundo en el cual por el dinero parece que todo vale.
Vivimos en un mundo, en varios mundos, pero en el mundo que me ha tocado a mí vivir es el primer mundo, que roba de otros mundos y que cada vez está peor porque estos señores y señoras de la usura, podríamos llamarlo así, pues nos están robando todo.
Es el mundo resultado de una evolución del ser humano que ha declarado su incompetencia para organizarse.
Voy a decir una cosa que puede ser que esté mal vista y que lo diga una señora, como dicen, peor, pero creo que todos los días me están dando por culo, todos los días. Y encima yo compro la vaselina para que sigan dándome por culo.
Realidad.
Voracidad.
Salvaje.
Cáncer.
Basura. Barbarie.
Canibalismo.
Deshonesto.
Corrupción.
Darwinismo. Ruina.
Desequilibrio.
Salvajismo.
Codicia.
Progreso.
Sistema.
Desigualdad.
Asesinos.
egoísmo.
El capitalismo es uno de los hijos de la ignorancia. Parte de su familia son la xenofobia, es el racismo, es el fascismo, son también hijos de la ignorancia.
El principal problema del mundo es el capitalismo salvaje que nos está devorando.
Que estamos permitiendo que hay mucha gente que todavía se muere de hambre. Y entonces eso es inadmisible, o sea, que nosotros ahora mismo estemos muy preocupados por la crisis que estamos viviendo y hay gente y niños que se mueren a mansalva en el resto del mundo.
Hay cantidad de población en el mundo que no porque no haya alimentos, sino porque no llegan a esos alimentos, y muy especialmente el agua, que en el futuro será la que provoque revoluciones.
La indiferencia es el principal problema.
La avaricia.
La introducción de la tecnología y de la nueva sociedad que permite a muy poca gente a dirigir a todos los demás.
La incapacidad que los países que conforman esto que llamamos mundo tienen para integrar políticas que permitan la regulación de una realidad que ha pillado una profundidad como en ningún otro momento, que es la realidad de la globalización financiera, y que pone en jaque a soberanías enteras y a millones y millones de seres humanos en todo el mundo.
Ellos lo que pretendían con la globalización, lo que nos han estado vendiendo todo el rato es globalización, pero sobre todo de la libre circulación de sus grandes capitales, ¿no? Que no tengan fronteras ni siquiera legales ni morales.
Cuando dejas todo en manos de los mercados, se convierte en la ley de la selva. Se convierte todo en un gran casino en el que 4 señores tiran los dados en una mesa y se juegan el destino y la vida de todos.
A día de hoy, si una transacción del mercado financiero supone la muerte de 500.000 de personas, la van a hacer sin parpadear. Y esto es jodido, muy jodido.
Asesinas.
Destrucción.
Guerra. Corrupción.
A eliminar.
Negocio.
Instrumento del poder.
Paleolítico.
Cero.
Armas.
Estamos desde hace tiempo en una tercera guerra mundial, con el agravante de que las guerras son radioactivas. Todas.
Lo que ha ocurrido, por ejemplo, en Irak es alucinante, ¿no? Pasa el tiempo y dicen, bueno, es verdad, lo que dijimos era mentira. Bueno, pero nadie va a responder por los cientos de miles de muertes que ha habido, o cómo han asolado ese país, o cómo le han robado su materia prima, porque otra de las falacias que hacen es decir, era mentira que íbamos a por el petróleo es iraquí. Ya, pero como Irak tiene que pagar primero la destrucción de su país, les hacen pagar la guerra que han sufrido, que esto es acojonante. O sea, las balas, las bombas, lo tiene que pagar el pueblo iraquí. Pero ahora les hacen pagar también la reconstrucción. O sea, primero le rompen el país y tienen que pagar el que se lo rompan y la reconstrucción. ¿Cómo lo van a pagar? Con su petróleo.
Las torres gemelas no pudieron caerse por el impacto de los aviones. Bueno, cuando sucedió esto fue una especie de pistoletazo de salida para toda una cascada de guerras que estamos viviendo ahora.
La agresión potencial que existe en los grandes países capitalistas como grandes maquinarias de guerra, el hecho de que Estados Unidos sea una potencia agresiva contra los derechos del mundo y que el Estado español esté aliado al imperio americano para agredir a los pueblos del mundo, es un verdadero problema para todos los pueblos que quieren la paz.
El terrorismo desde el principio es un invento, y especialmente el terrorismo islámico. El terrorismo islámico empieza en Afganistán, cuando la CIA y los servicios secretos pakistaníes, antes de que intervenga la Unión Soviética, financian un grupo de mercenarios con dinero saudí para desestabilizar el gobierno prosoviético de Afganistán. El gobierno prosoviético de Afganistán naturalmente pide ayuda a la URSS y esa es la falsa invasión soviética. Esto no es una opinión mía. El Brzezinski, que en aquella época era el asesor del presidente Carter, lo reconoció. La intervención de la CIA es previa a la intervención de la Unión Soviética. Y lo dice en una frase que es muy significativa: atrajimos a los rusos a la trampa afgana.
Yo creo que hay muchos poderes, no hay uno solo. O sea, en ese sentido, sí es cierto, la trilateral existe, ellos mismos lo reconocen, Bilderberg existe, ellos mismos lo reconocen y sabemos incluso dónde se reúnen, ¿no? Pero no es un solo poder, si fuera un solo poder ya estaríamos absolutamente dominados.
En la foto de las Azores eran tres, ¿no? Bush, Blair y Aznar. Y se ignora siempre a Durão Barroso, que es otro de los que montó la guerra de Irak y que es el responsable ahora de la Comunidad Europea, que esto es gravísimo y por eso nunca le sacan en la foto. La foto siempre sacan tres y prefieren hablar del trío, pues eran un cuarteto. Y el cuarto es el que dirige Europa. Tiene cojones, pero es así.
Los políticos no gobiernan. Ningún político gobierna. Es algo evidente. Nadie puede creerse que el país más poderoso del mundo sea gobernado por Ronald Reagan, un ex-actor de películas del oeste malas.
Lo que nos vende el pensamiento único es que todo es blanco-negro, siempre hay un mal ahí arriba contra el que se puede luchar y el problema del mundo en el que vivimos es que no lo hay, es que no tenemos esta figura de poder súper reconocible, estos villanos que se encierran en una sala y a los que ya está, o sea, sería muy fácil, sería cargárselo.
¿Quién maneja los hilos? El propio capital.
Las grandes corporaciones y los políticos que defienden sus intereses.
No es de locos pensar que más o menos todo esto está pactado de alguna manera, ¿no? Los famosos mercados. Pues los mercados tienen que funcionar de una manera, hay una serie de señores que saben cómo funciona y bueno, pues ellos deciden hacia dónde tienen que ir las cosas.
Entonces estos señores son los que meten la pasta en los sitios y deciden la pasta que se van a llevar, aunque eso descapitalice un país. Entonces sí, es que son los mismos. Porque es una historia transversal. Es decir, estos fondos de inversión son también copropietarios de bancos que también son copropietarios de las agencias de calificación. Entonces estaríamos en manos de no más de 140 empresas, muy grandes.
Los grandes negocios actualmente son las drogas, las armas y el petróleo, los hidrocarburos en general, no solo el petróleo. Esos son los grandes gobernantes, digamos, y todos están interconectados, aunque parezca que lo de las drogas no. Evidentemente el mercado de las drogas es invalorable, puesto que la mayor parte es negro, y parte de las armas también, pero no hay más que ver dónde se producen las drogas. ¿Cuál es el principal productor de opio del mundo? Afganistán. ¿Qué es Afganistán? Una base de la OTAN. Sencillamente. ¿Cuál es el principal productor de cocaína del mundo? Colombia. ¿Qué es Colombia? 7 bases norteamericanas. Nadie puede creerse que haya una guerra contra las drogas simplemente con estos datos.
El ser humano es oportunista y hay gente más oportunistas que otros. Y los más oportunistas, los más listos, los más sin pudor también y sin vergüenza han conseguido llegar antes de los demás a estas nuevas tecnologías que controlan el poder. Entonces, un Berlusconi en Italia que ha podido, utilizando la televisión, que es la penúltima nueva tecnología, porque ahora hay más nuevo, pero ha controlado las mentes italianas en muchas maneras diferentes, incluso en su propia sexualidad, porque ha sido el más listo y el más veloz a entender el poder de la televisión.
Yo creo que es gente que tiene todo el dinero del mundo y lo único que les falta es más poder. Quieren aglutinar más poder, más poder, más poder, lo quieren manejar todo.
Cobardía.
Humano.
Sensación.
Parálisis.
Control.
Bloqueo. Excusa. Mal compañero.
Necesario.
Desconocido.
Valor.
Terror de Estado.
Creado artificialmente.
Uno de los ideólogos del neoliberalismo, que era Milton Friedman, apostaba no solo por una doctrina que básicamente implicaba quitarle contenido al Estado para dárselo al mercado y unas políticas monetaristas muy diferentes de las políticas que se venían aplicando en la posguerra, keynesianas de de estímulo de la demanda para favorecer el crecimiento. Bueno, entonces Friedman no solo a sus discípulos, no solo les exigía, entre comillas, ¿no?, ser sus discípulos, sino de alguna manera que funcionaran como apóstoles de la doctrina, de tal manera que era gente que estaba agazapada, y yo creo que incluso Friedman hacía ese planteamiento de que estuvieran un poco agazapados porque habría un momento idóneo para que esas doctrinas se pudieran poner en práctica.
La cuestión es tener a toda una sociedad, a todo un país en estado de shock para, a partir de ahí, dejarles, digamos, como en encefalograma plano, y en ese grado de vulnerabilidad máxima y de desorientación máxima que puede provocar un tsunami o un golpe de Estado, meter a saco toda una serie de medidas económicas que si te las meten una tras otra no te da tiempo a reaccionar, porque cuando ya estás queriendo reaccionar a una medida ya te están metiendo la siguiente.
Toda la doctrina de la Escuela de Chicago, que tan exitosamente en términos electorales importó a Reino Unido en los años 80 Margaret Thatcher, que de alguna manera elevó a categoría de gobierno en Estados Unidos Ronald Reagan, y que tanto sedujo intelectualmente a Aznar aquí en España, desregulación de los mercados financieros, baja presión fiscal, poco espacio de lo público.
Lo bueno que tenemos nuestra generación, en mi opinión, es que desde que cayó el muro de Berlín no tenemos que hacernos muchos debates existenciales e ideológicos. Sabemos que el socialismo real, el comunismo, fracasó. Es decir, solo tienes que irte ahora a La Habana para saber lo que es, o solo tenías que ir a Checoslovaquia o Polonia en el 89. Y en contra están las políticas yo no decía liberalismo, pero en efecto de libre mercado y de democracias liberales. Y eso es la única alternativa hoy en día, sea de izquierdas o de derechas, porque tan democracia liberal es la de Tony Blair como la de Cameron, o tal democracia liberal es la de Felipe González como la de Aznar. Y hoy en día, por suerte o por desgracia, no hay alternativa. Por tanto, los Chicago Boys, en mi opinión, siguen teniendo razón.
Los Chicago Boys están muy presentes en nuestras vidas. Nos dicen que científicamente se ha demostrado que Milton Friedman tenía razón, y la historia nos demuestra, por el contrario, que tiene razón para empobrecer a las mayorías sociales y seguir enriqueciendo a la élite.
Milton Friedman no fue un inspirador. Él también recogió todo lo que se venía diciendo desde el siglo XIX por parte del liberalismo económico, ¿no? Pero sí, subsisten, sobreviven ese tipo de políticas, y estamos en una época en la que particularmente están imponiéndose.
Yo no me puedo creer que un presidente de gobierno, en este caso el señor Rajoy, llegue a Europa y le digan, nos debes 1.000, sí, pues fuera todo y nos pagan los 1.000. Esto llevado a términos de microeconomía sería como si alguien debe a otro 3.000 euros y le dice, me debes 3.000 euros, ya tío, pero es que ahora me han echado el trabajo, no te los puedo pagar, te los pagaré cuando pueda, soy tu amigo, soy un hombre honrado, o te iré pagando como pueda. Y el otro le dice, no, tus hijos que no coman, vete de tu casa y tal, y alguien dice, vale, pues toma, te doy los 3.000 y mis hijos no comen. Eso no lo haría ningún padre honrado, con deuda. Pero eso es lo que tiene que hacer un presidente de gobierno. Un presidente de gobierno no puede destruir un país diciendo, es que tenemos una deuda y hay que pagarla. Eso no puede ocurrir en ninguno. Entonces, hay algo detrás que le lleva a hacerlo.
España.
Españas.
Españoles.
Mi país.
Un país más en toda Europa.
Hay muchas Españas. Y dentro de España hay muchos pueblos que quieren gobernarse a sí mismos.
Para mí es un objetivo y una guía en mi vida.
España ahora mismo está secuestrada.
A remolque de Estados Unidos.
No nos hemos quitado la colilla de Felipe II todavía, ¿no? España es un país moderno, pero que todavía no ha entrado en la modernidad.
Primero nos trataron de convencer de que éramos primer mundo. En las relaciones con América Latina he visto muchas relaciones muy apestosas por la idea esta, somos primer mundo y estáis viniendo aquí a vivir con nosotros y nosotros os protegemos y no sé qué. Primero ese nosotros era ya la primera mentira, ¿no? No me siento nosotros con los que produjeron los GAL. Por ejemplo, no me siento nosotros con los que están haciendo la explotación del hombre por el hombre y aprovechando este tipo de cosas en el sentido económico.
Mi sensación es que está como a las puertas de una especie de hora de la verdad otra vez, ¿no? De que las decisiones que tomemos en la locura en la que estamos, digo locura de crisis, de coyuntura de crisis, en el momento tan aparentemente difícil que estamos viviendo, van a determinar claramente la forma de vida de al menos una o dos generaciones de ciudadanos en este país, ¿no?
Se han hecho mal las cosas. La política ha fallado, ha habido malos políticos que han dilapidado un país que iba como un tiro y ahora pues va mal. Hay que hacer mucho. Ya se ha hecho bastante en este año, pero hay que seguir acometiendo reformas.
Están recortando por todos los lados, están exprimiendo a los que tienen, no, a los que no tienen. A los que tienen los están favoreciendo.
De los mayores problemas que ahora mismo en España es el bipartidismo y la corrupción.
Aquí se había logrado la conquista de una serie de libertades y derechos que hacían al caso a un Estado parcialmente de fachada democrática. Y los últimos 4 o 5 años de crisis económica, social y política, han deteriorado la situación hasta convertir esto en un verdadero frente de batalla contra el derecho al trabajo, contra el derecho a la salud, contra todos los derechos de la población.
Como cada vez teníamos un poquito más, ya no éramos el obrero, que está la señora que está fregando, sino ya aspirabas a un puesto un poquito más alto, ya los sueldos un poquito más altos, ya podías acceder a tener una vivienda, un coche, obviamente, ya no eran Mercedes, o sea, no era 600, ahora puedes aspirar a un coche, incluso casi hasta un Mercedes. Entonces, la gente se ha conformado con ir aspirando a eso.
Siempre se dice que crecer es mejor que decrecer, se lleva mejor, ¿no? Estamos decreciendo y estamos retrocediendo 20, 30 años.
No hay un solo ciudadano en el planeta que decida sus posibilidades. Sus posibilidades las decide el mercado o los bancos. Pues la segunda historia que se han inventado gorda, que es cojonuda, es la de que el estar endeudado es un delito del ciudadano, cuando este sistema está basado en el endeudamiento. Si la gente no se endeuda y si el propio sistema no se endeuda, no puede funcionar.
La gente que invirtió en dinero en cualquier cosa ya la tienes en la calle, o con las preferentes o con cualquier otra cosa, están hechos polvo. Y luego no hay perspectiva de trabajo de nada.
Ahora creo que nos lo están quitando todo, o sea estamos viviendo un momento absoluto de retroceso, ¿no? Ya no hay ese contrapeso que suponía la Unión Soviética en esa lógica de Guerra Fría y por lo tanto lo que se dedican ahora mismo no hay enemigo, esa globalización, ese nuevo mundo, pues es quitar todas las conquistas que tenían que dar precisamente para mantener una paz social. Ahora mismo pienso que tienen un pensamiento oligárquico, yo digo feudal, pero realmente no es feudal porque no se ha pegado a la tierra.